Terry Allen Reed has passed from this earth. And for those of us who deeply loved and admired this kind, generous, funny, pastoral, wise, loving man, everything changed in a few horrible seconds the morning of November 17. We were consumed with loss and grief, the kind that cannot be expressed in words, and we still find ourselves in grief and struggling to get our feet back under ourselves so that life can go on, as Terry would wish for it. Whenever a loved one passes from this earth, we pay a dreaded price for that God-given love. What is the price? Unspeakable sadness, mourning, a deep aching that fills every part of our being. For months, if not longer, we are a blur of emotions and thoughts, rote actions, and feelings. And we just need so much to be loved and reassured and comforted. And so we meet today for that purpose, and to honor Terry's life in grateful remembrance. Good afternoon to each one of you, and welcome. This memorial service is one of three being held to pay tribute to Terry. Now, frankly, at this point in the service, I could see Terry, if he were here, standing up and saying, 3 services? Seriously? Are you kidding me? Well, Terry, we're not kidding. Because you see people in Spokane, Kansas City, Los Angeles, really all parts of the country and beyond, loved you. And you made a way to find us feel like we are your closest friend. You loved us, and so now we wish to share in memory of him. And because we are people of faith, we wish to do so in the context of worship, asking for and receiving the gift of the sacred Spirit, the sacred Comforter, to be among us. To that end, we listen now to these words of the Apostle Paul, adapted from the book of Romans in the 8th chapter. Likewise, the Holy Spirit helps us in our grief and weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought, and yet that very same Spirit intercedes on our behalf with sighs too deep for words. As a congregation, shall we join together in song?
Oh
sustainer of life. From the deep recesses of the universe, you call us into being, fresh, new, and filled with promise. Each breath we take, each sense we perceive, each epiphany we dream is a gift from you. I ask now that this waiting congregation may be apprehended by the mystery of your Holy Spirit, for we need you. We need each other. We need the assurance that our beloved Terry has joined the mighty cloud of witnesses that speaks to us in a whisper of hope, speaks above the cacophony of injustice, and speaks to each one of us in the constant, persistent bonds of love that can never be broken. Comfort us in our grief. Help us to see and believe that this aching night shall end, and that many new dawns are yet to be. We have been blessed beyond measure by walking part of life's pathway with Terry. He was an extraordinary example of grace and peace, reconciliation, and really all good things that make life worth living. And for that we offer our deepest thanksgiving. Be with us now in this time of remembrance and celebration through Christ, the one we declare to be the light and the life. Amen.
Begin with a couple of notes of gratitude. First, gratitude for and a sense of honor for being here at the second service to honor Terry. And I also have to give a note of gratitude to Terry because, like in Spokane, he dressed me. Those of you who know him well know that he typified the phrase, the clothes horse, and to use the best analogy I could think of this morning, I probably am a clothes ant. And so, for the second time, I'm wearing one of his ties, and I'm sure he would have some comments about the fact that my white socks don't go with my khaki pants. And I want to be very sensitive to time, but I also think in honor of the man Terry was, if you ever heard him preach, you know there was not a deadline Terry could not break. So if I go over by a couple of minutes, it is with his permission. November 17th, for me, will always be the day the world ended. And I say that because it is the day the world as I knew it ended. And from that day forward, it has been about the process that I never wanted to happen, of building a new world. And so in one way, we should not be here today. It is wrong for us to be mourning and celebrating the life of my brother. And yet in the world that now exists without him, there is no other place I would rather be. When our dad died, I was 7 and Terry was 9. My mom made a choice, and I'm sure if you ever heard Terry preach, you know this story well. She made a clear choice that the best way to raise us for her was to immerse us in the church. And Terry claimed and used the language often that the three of us, but primarily he and I, were claimed by a fierce love. I know that that's true. I also know, and those of you who know me a little bit, know that he got the love and I got mostly the fierce. But as part of that process, and I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious or both, and I don't remember when it happened, but I made a choice to pattern my life after his. It became clear to me that the best person I could be was the person that followed in his footsteps. I'm not sure he always liked that. And in fact, you're going to hear in what Dirk Ellingson wrote later how he might have felt about that from time to time. But I also know that for me, that made me who I was. I could be who I was in the world because of Terry. And there was always comfort in being half of the real brothers. And now that comfort is gone. I want to tell just a couple of stories. Those who were in Spokane know that I could tell a lot more. And my time speaking there was way over the limit that we've been suggested to speak here, but I want to honor that time. One of those stories, I don't remember how old we were. In my memory, I want to say I was 8 or 9, and so he would have been 10 or 11. And Spokane in the late 60s, early 70s had a semi-pro hockey team called the Jets, and we would go and watch games from time to time. And I forget who took us, but he and I went to a game, and we got there very early enough to watch the players warm up, and then be down at the gate where they came off the ice for the Zamboni to come on and recondition the ice. And there was a bunch of kids our age waiting by the gate, urging the usher who was holding the kids back so the players could go off to give them the puck that the players had practiced with. And I stood there quietly, didn't say anything, wasn't consciously trying to do some, psychological twist, but the usher very quietly and subtly handed the puck behind his back to me. And it was awesome, because everybody else was clamoring, give it to me, and then he handed it to me. Fast forward to the third period, we were sitting up high in the old Spokane Coliseum, and it was Terry and I and whoever was with us, and I forget who that was. And behind us and to our left was a man and his young son. And we overheard them talking about the game, and it was his first ever hockey game. And the father said, "So, son, did you enjoy your first game?" And he talked about what he loved. And he said, "But Dad, what I really wish I would have gotten was a puck." At which point, Terry, being the forward-thinking pastoral leader he was, took the puck out of my hands and handed it to the young boy. I was, as you might imagine, not very happy about that. And now fast forward, 30 years, and he was giving a sermon at Audubon Terrace congregation in Spokane. And I don't remember the theme for the sermon. I don't remember the overall message. But as part of his sermon, and if you ever heard him preach, he did this masterfully. He worked in a great story. And he told the story of that night. And he talked about what he learned over the years about our relationship. He then pulled from the pulpit a hockey puck and walked down into the congregation to give it to me. That story typifies Terry for me as the, probably knowing a little bit better, big brother that he always was, but also the person who was never too big to rethink what he believed and what he knew and how to show that. There's another story that happened much later in life that kind of typifies the idea that the path that he followed is the one that I thought would make the best sense for me. It was the summer of 1982, and it was about 6 weeks or 8 weeks after Andrea was born. I had just gotten my first job at Park College, and I flew back to Spokane for some summer vacation before school started. And so I was in Spokane with our mom, and we were checking in with Linda and Terry and Andrea, the new baby, and we called on the phone. And back in the days of landlines, there were 2 extensions, and I was in the kitchen and my mom was in the bedroom. And they told us the story of being at a missile silo vigil down near Warrensburg, back in the days when all the evil was buried in the earth there. And the juxtaposition of this brand new, delicate, glorious life that Andrea was against the death that these missiles represented. And there was something in the experience, as Terry conveyed it to us, that made me know in that moment that my life would change forever and I would become an activist for peace and justice, which I have been since that day, 33 years later. And I don't know if anybody else has those marking experiences that transform them vicariously, but that's what it was for me. That was the experience that Terry had. And because I had set myself on that path, the path that I followed eagerly, willingly sometimes, the path that brings us here today. He was someone who made it possible for me to be who I am. When I made a conscious decision to leave the path that he had blazed and I followed, to leave the church, to go in a different way. And so literally the paths, the fork in the road. I don't think he was happy about it at the beginning. I don't think he fully understood it. I do know with a clear conscience that he respected it. And he told me in the aftermath several times, in different contexts, sometimes in cards, sometimes in person, that he was proud as hell to be my brother. And I felt I was always the one who was proud as hell to be his brother. And he always confirmed that it was mutual. I want to end this with a reading from one of my favorite writers. And I'm not sure he's a writer that Terry ever read with any extensively at all. The writer's name is Derek Jensen, and this is from his book, A Language Older Than Words. It's the closing 3 paragraphs. And in the days since the world ended, I've tried to find other writers' words who can say it way better than I can about who Terry was, and this is the best that I found. Several years ago, I walked into a cold January afternoon to take care of the chickens. My breath hung white in the air. Dogs danced at my feet. I heard in the distance the clamor of geese, then stood speechless to watch a huge V fly overhead. I opened my mouth to say something. I didn't know what it would be. And heard my voice say 3 times, Godspeed. Suddenly, and for no reason I could understand, I burst into tears. Then I ran into the house. Walking back outside later and staring into the now empty sky, I realized that in speaking, not only had I been wishing them well for their journey south, but that they too had been using my voice and my breath to wish me just as well on my own, just as difficult journey. The tears, it became clear to me, had been neither from sorrow nor joy, but from homecoming. Like a sailor who has been too long at sea and who spontaneously burst into tears on smelling land and feeling those tentative first steps on solid ground at home. It is not possible to recover from atrocity in isolation. It is, in fact, precisely this isolation that induces the atrocities. If we wish to stop the atrocities, we need merely step away from the isolation. There is a whole world waiting for us, ready to welcome us home. It has missed us as sorely as we have missed it, and it is time to return. Godspeed.
You've already heard, and you're going to hear some amazing things on my uncle today. He was, as we all know, an awesome man. Hoping to shed some light on who he was for us as family members and for me as an uncle. My name is Ben Bink, and my mom is Linda's sister. Something that I'm always going to appreciate about my Uncle Terry was that he lived his life with great balance. Full-time minister, he often served in roles that would take two or three full-time people. He was able to still live a life of adventure and interest. We always got to connect through his passion for travel and for sports. As you can see up here, definitely full of sports. I remember watching the Giants defeat my Kansas City Royals and win the World Series in 2014. He was a gracious winner. Didn't tease me that much, only just a little bit. And he was also the first one to text me this year when my team took home the championship. I think this is one of the things I appreciated about him the most. He took the time to get to know me, my interests, and the interests of those around me and around him. He not only got to know those interests, but he took the time to congratulate and celebrate with all of us. His two most common phrases were, "I love you," and "I'm proud of you." It's proud to share. He was never shy about saying those two things that he very much believed. And I'm not alone in experiencing this love and support. He shared it with family and friends. My favorite story, and I think one of his too, was one of the things that I think truly highlights him as a person and a family member. Takes place a few years ago when my twin sisters were only about 2 years old. Mom, Dad, and I went on a trip to Florida. I left the toddlers at home. My Aunt Linda and him flew in from Spokane, Washington to babysit the twins that week. And if you're keeping track of the mileage at your seats, I'm sure you all are doing that. That's about a 1,569-mile journey to babysit. Quite the commute, I would say. And if that's not commitment to your family, then I don't even know what it is, honestly. Anyways, there was one afternoon during the week where my Uncle Terry and my Aunt Linda were watching TV with one of the twins in the living room. And my little sister Laura waddled up to the TV and pressed a button on the VCR. This caused the channel to change. And my uncle, in his very gentle voice, said, "Now Laura, please don't touch those buttons." And he proceeded to watch Laura slump over, facing the TV, as she was obviously a little startled because of this tall man and his deep voice. And as he would describe her, as diminished. Several minutes pass as he continues to watch TV, and he looks down and sees Laura still in that little pouty, diminished stance. He feels terrible. He proceeds to get down to the floor, get all the way down to her level, which I'm sure was not an easy task for him, to comfort her and hopefully try to cheer her up, only to come around to the side of her and realize that she had fallen asleep. He's told this story several times. He tells it every time he comes to town. And I can still vividly hear him. I can still see him demonstrating that slouched over position. It's still hard to believe that the man that I looked up to It's still hard to believe to myself that the man I looked up to so much isn't here with us physically. But I know that he's with us each and every moment. And I'm sure if you listen closely enough, you can still hear the words, "I love you all, and I'm proud of you." And maybe even "Go Giants."
Everybody's wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody's worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say once gone, you're gone forever, and some say you're gonna come back. Some say rest in the arms of the Savior if in sinful ways you lack. Some say that they're coming back in a garden, bunch of carrots and little sweets. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worried about where they're gonna go and the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say they're going to a place called glory, and I ain't saying it ain't a fact. But I've heard that I'm on the road to purgatory, and I don't like the sound of that. I believe in love and to live my life accordingly. But I choose to let the mystery be. Everybody's wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody's worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. I think I'll just let the mystery be.
Good afternoon. My name is Joanne Fisher, and I'm going to share with you about Terry as a leader and a pastor. Before Terry was employed by the Community of Christ as a full-time minister, he serves as a pastor for the Audubon Terrace congregation in Spokane, Washington. Terry had the heart of a pastor, and he cared deeply about his congregants. And as I spoke to those who attended the Audubon Terrace congregation during his tenure, the same adjectives were spoken over and over again to describe Terry's leadership. Words such as loving, visionary, generous, humble, inspiring. Jennifer Brock Olson related to me her perception of that time. She told me that she loved the sense of community at the Audubon Terrace congregation. In fact, she loved it so much she wanted nothing more than to gift her children with and to that kind of a community. She thought that her congregation was open, loving, energetic, and progressive, and they were. Later, she said, though, she realized that people loved and supported Terry and his vision so much that there were all better versions of themselves, including her. What higher praise can be spoken for a leader? In the fall of 2001, Terry went under appointment with the church and became the first Mission Center president for the Inland West Mission Center, an area that includes 7 states and 3 time zones. He brought with him all the qualities that made him a wonderful pastor, and he became an extraordinary Mission Center president. He was fully present, he was knowledgeable, and he was competent, and he was fun. Terry was the first person to acknowledge a job well done, and I've heard him say, "I love you and I'm proud of you." And he not only acknowledged it, but he went on to tell you specifically what it was he had appreciated. When there were difficult issues to be dealt with, he was honest, he was fair, and he was compassionate. Terry had the ability to lead and supervise, all the while never forgetting he was a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. And here, Terry loved to take photographs. So here are some snapshots, so to speak, to let you know who Terry was to me. Terry delegated responsibilities when it was called for, but he never took advantage of that. He once discovered a mess, and I mean a mess, in the shower of the boys' restroom at a camp, and without a word to the director or somebody else, anybody else, he cleaned it up himself. Terry would share your joy and your pain, and he understood that sometimes they are simultaneous. While I was at Spec one year, my first grandchild was born. I was elated that he was here safely, but I was deeply disappointed that I had missed the birth. A little while later, Terry was standing in the lobby of Tess Morgan with Linda and with his laptop to show me pictures of Jared. He had tears in his eyes when he said, "Joanne, meet your grandson." Terry was sensitive. After a business meeting in Boise where Terry was the chair, he asked everyone who would support my position to stand. And then he looked into the audience and saw my mother sitting in her wheelchair. As soon as the service was over, he knelt down in front of her wheelchair, took her hand tenderly in his, and apologized for his oversight. And Terry was fun. I always look forward to time spent with Terry and Linda, and whether you were working or taking a vacation together, I knew that it would be a time that was joy-filled and memory-filled. Ultimately, Terry went on to become the Mission Center president of both the Southern California and Southern International Mission Centers, covering areas from southern Utah to Las Vegas through Southern California down to northern Mexico. At the time of his death, he was also serving as an interim administrator for the Sierra Pacific Mission Center, which is Northern California. His reach as a minister covered more than 100 congregations and touched thousands of lives. Terry led and served on several boards and committees and was held in high regard. He has served the church at many levels and was loved and respected for his confidence, for his passion, for his heart. Terry lived his life in the service of others and truly delighted in those he served. And while his responsibilities grew, he continued to have the heart of a pastor. Someone asked me once what it was like to work for Terry Reed. And my response was, it felt like working for Jesus. He lived his faith every single day. He did it with dignity and with strength and with great love. I know that I am a better person for our time together, and I am deeply, truly blessed to a DNA level to have known and to have loved him.
Dirk Ellingson regrets that he couldn't be with us this afternoon. My name is Brian McMurray. I'm happy to read the statement that he wrote on his behalf. So these are some of Dirk's thoughts about Terry. When I was in college, the religious questions in our residence halls were answered by a fellow with just enough theological background to impress his audience. We consulted this dormitory oracle about the odd sect headquartered an hour northwest of Warrensburg that believed Jesus would one day return to Independence, Missouri. A couple of months after the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints opened their priesthood to women, and I earned my BS degree, I was out searching for work. The program director at the TV station in Warrensburg told me of a producer job at the RLDS auditorium. His cousin was Linda Reed. Confused about rules in the Latter-day Saint tradition churches, I confessed to being a coffee drinker at my job interview. He assured me it would not be a problem. In hindsight, I'm impressed he didn't laugh, what with Jack Ergo and the Worship Commission sharing a coffee and kitchen area with our office. The RLDS Electronic Media Commission opted to give me a one-week tryout on a location shoot in Lee Summit to see if I was a good fit with the crew. I lived in Columbia, so I needed a place to stay. The Reeds, knowing little about me, other than I worked with Linda's cousin and I drank coffee, graciously offered to let me stay in their home. Although I didn't know the phrase then, I was staying in the homes of the saints. I was touched by the gesture and immediately liked the four Reeds at the time: Terry, Linda, 2-year-old daughter Andrea, and another in the string of Scotty dogs named Scotty. Before I met the Reeds, I was neither for nor against becoming a father. I've since told younger people reluctant to have children that you'll make up your mind when you meet a cool toddler. Andrea was my cool toddler that made me want a child of my own someday. And Terry was a magnificent father. Because his own father died when Terry was a boy, he spent his teen years without a paternal example, yet somehow became an exemplary, caring father. When he later helped my daughter Claire, as a baby, to make bubbling sounds by jiggling his finger across her mouth, I thought that was a great crowd pleaser among the baby set, and I've employed it ever since. Terry was a cool dad to a cool toddler turned cool young woman. Terry attributed much of his sensitivity to Linda. She must have molded him before I met them, as Terry always seemed to me a model of sensitivity and kindness. Terry was also very smart, quality you don't always find in combination with kindness, but Terry had intellect and compassion in abundance. I don't think I'd ever used a word not already in his vocabulary. He expanded my outlook as the first person I met who considered himself a citizen of the world and not just his country. He made me see the subtle racism I unwittingly expressed with a simple query: Dirk, why do you say we and they when talking about African Americans? I tried to never do it again. When I called the peach Crayola the skin color crown, Terry would challenge me with, whose skin color? Certainly shaped by the increasingly progressive outlook of his church denomination, Terry's views were always expressed with convincing eloquence and passion. I had leftist leanings anyway as a young man, which Terry certainly encouraged. But I was always more of a theoretical ethicist, while Terry practiced what he preached. He was respectful towards everyone, but very committed to his side of the political spectrum. He would tolerate no argument for Independence's most famous citizen bombing the Japanese. He did not like firearms or violent toys. "Terry, didn't you ever play with G.I. Joes as a kid?" I asked him once. "Well, sure," he conceded, "but the fascination in my neighborhood was always with dressing them." I told him we just popped the heads off and switched the bodies when we wanted to change their outfits. I was very sad when Terry moved back to Spokane in 1987, both personally and professionally. I kept working at church headquarters another 20 years, stayed close friends with Terry, even though we're a couple of time zones apart. Scores of recent tributes on social media showed me Terry had a long vocational life of adventures and ministry after departing the center place. So many friends touched by his friendship. A guy everybody liked. And so many people could have shared a friendship tribute to Terry. I'm honored that Linda and Andrea selected me for the Independence portion of his memorial services. Sorry I'm not with you today. Lisa and I have moved to Louisiana, living with my stepdaughter Amanda well between homes. I hope Mandy is not compiling a list of reasons I should move out, as Terry did on his brother 30 years ago. He compiled the itemization with letters instead of numbers and quickly exhausted the alphabet. "I had to start over on the Brad list," Terry told me one day, "and I'm up to double J." There was great affection between the Reed brothers, and I loved to watch them spar. Terry was also like a brother to me. I loved Terry. I dare say that if all assembled here were deciding who to place on our Mount Rushmore of the best human beings we've met in our lives, we would agree to place Terry Reed on the mountainside.
We're a tall, strong tree, moving gently in the breeze, staying steady in the storm, providing rest, hope, and peace. You have many in your shade, in your cool, soft embrace, though now you may not be seen. We know your roots run deep. Stood as tall as a redwood. You are a source of life and goodness. You would give and share your heart, knowing each had a part in the song of soulful love, the song you sing your whole life long. You had wisdom in your face, you helped each find their place. You were a tall, strong tree, moving gently in the breeze, staying steady in the storm, providing rest, hope, and peace. You held many in your shade, in your cool, soft embrace, though now you may not be seen. You know your roots run deep. We know your roots run deep. Our ground was solid and safe, beneath your canopy of grace. We nourished and revived, you taught the way of purpose life. You looked down upon the earth, you had a vision for new birth, incarnation at the center of the world that you made better. You were a tall, strong tree, moving gently in the breeze, staying shelter of your life. When you're passing, you know you're still alive. You were a tall, strong tree, moving gently in the breeze, staying steady in the storm, providing rest, hope, and peace. You held many in your shade, in your cool, soft embrace, though now you may not be seen. You are a tall, strong tree, and you always shall be. You're connected to this earth, to this holy family, and you call us to life, to an awareness of being, though now you may not be seen. Though now you may not be seen, you know your roots run deep. We know your roots run deep. We know your roots run deep. We know your roots run deep.
We are talking about peace as a distant goal, as an end we seek, but one day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal we seek, but that it is a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. All of this is saying that in the final analysis, means and ends must cohere, because the end is pre-existent in the means, and ultimately, destructive means cannot bring about constructive ends. For as long as I can remember, these words from Martin Luther King Jr. appeared below Terry Reed's email signature line. For Terry, these were not peaceful pleasantries simply meant to underscore Community of Christ's profound focus on peace and justice. For Terry, these words spoke to a compelling and persistent call deep in his soul, which propelled him into a life of ministry constantly connected with taking action in our world to bring healing, wholeness, and dignity to all persons. For Terry, advocating for peace and justice was very simply part of what it meant to be a member of the human species and follow Jesus. Whether it was attending a peace rally protesting nuclear weapons with Linda and their brand new baby Andrea, or connecting peace and justice work with his ministry, Terry's journey as a peacemaker took him many places. He provided valuable leadership to the Camp Buckhorn board and the vision to build a peace center on the campgrounds. The impressive multi-purpose peace center was completed and dedicated to the pursuit of peace in 2009. Terry served as the treasurer for the Southern California Ecumenical Council, where he dedicated much of his work to the group Advocacy for Immigration Reform. Terry was an active member of Community of Christ Human Rights Team for a number of years, and in 2004, he was named the chair. He worked tirelessly to keep the church informed about current issues and provide concrete avenues for congregations to advocate on behalf of the voiceless and the oppressed. Terry made valuable contributions to official statements on torture and immigration, as well as the resolution on human trafficking approved at World Conference in 2010. Terry also found creative ways to help people learn how to support justice, like serving fair trade chocolate at staff meetings. And while we munched away on delicious chocolate, he talked about the power money has to change the world by choosing to purchase fair trade products. Last August at the Sunstone Symposium in Salt Lake City, it was my privilege to chair Terry's session entitled Immigration, a Moral Issue for the Saints. 11 weeks later, Terry was back in Salt Lake to participate in the Parliament of the World's Religions. He enthusiastically embraced the opportunity to learn more about building bridges of understanding between religions, so we might work for the good of all humanity as one united people inhabiting this planet. Terry Reid was a man of peace and justice, and he carried with him the very essence of peacemaker. At the core of all the advocacy and activism resided a heart and soul of authentic kindness in constant relationship with God, the source of all life. Terry was the bearer of kindness. His entire life was a gentle sound that echoed the presence of compassionate goodness. To be with Terry was to feel understood and seen. There was no judgment or harsh perception. There was no self-serving agenda. His was a presence of dignity, empathy, and patience, illuminating the darkness in such a way that many found hope. For Terry, being a peacemaker was not separate from daily life. Through his willingness to break himself open and pour himself out, Terry became a vehicle of divine grace, gently blessing the world in such a way that all who felt his touch could see. Peace is not merely a distant goal we seek. It is a means by which we arrive at that goal. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the messenger who announces peace. Terry, we love you, and we are so proud of you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to tell a different side of Terry. He's been called Jesus. It was in the spring of 1977 when Bob Slazer, who had recruited me to go to Park College, came on campus, and he was telling a group of my girlfriends and I that he had a new basketball player coming. Well, you can imagine how titillated we were. Can I say titillated in church? He said he was tall, he was dark, he was handsome, and I said, he's mine. Later, Bob saw us on campus, and he said, hey, you got him. This is a picture of our first date. I don't know how he'd feel about showing it, but I think it's kind of funny. But as you can see, I never had a chance. He captured my heart, he captured my mind, my imagination. From the first moment we met, I loved everything about him. his keen mind, the way he played slapjack, his kind eyes, his beautiful hands, and his giant feet. The way that he would enter a doorway and fill it, and then enter the room and light it up. He was larger than life to me, and he still is. After our first date, I called my mom on the phone and I said, "Mom, I've met the man I'm going to marry." She must have been terrified. I know I would. But I knew when I met him that he was it for me. He was strong-willed, and so am I, and we went at it. On the first night, or not on the first night, but one of our first fights, oh God, that would have been awful. One of the first fights we had was whether or not it was okay for women to speak in church from the pulpit. Terry said no and quoted scripture at me. He also said that if I wanted to work part-time after we got married, that he would let me. Oh boy. You can imagine how that one went. And as I said, we went at it. But we had so much fun. You will have to wait for my memorial service to hear all the vast lists of things that he challenged me on, and I didn't survive. But anyway, Terry was never trapped by his beliefs, kind of like what Brad said. He was not afraid to rethink long-held positions on issues then and now, especially when it came to issues of justice, peace, equality, and inclusion. He always pushed for what was fair and what was right. He would study the issues and problems and adjust his understandings based on what he understood would be the best for all, regardless of their status, religion, race, sex, sexual orientation, anything. He loved people and he lived his life making sure that all of us were welcome at the table. Welcome at the communion table and welcome at the political table. He was always open to new understandings of God and that God who loves all of us equally. Even in the midst of turmoil, he was, for the most part, I saw a little bit of a different side, but for the most part, he was cool, calm, and collected. One night, we were eating his favorite spaghetti, Connie's recipe, of course. That was his favorite, not mine. And we got into it about something, and I got really pissed off. Can I say pissed off in church? And so abruptly, I decided to make my point and push back from the table. But our house in Glendale Gardens, right over here back then, had carpet in the kitchen. And so when I went to push back from the table, my chair didn't move. But the table did, and it went up. And everything slid into his lap and onto the floor. And as he calmly and collectively responded to that, he said 5 words: "I'm not cleaning that up." And then, of course, we laughed, and it was over. Some of you may have read my post on Facebook. When our dear friend John Willis passed away very suddenly, Terry and I went and met with his wife, Wandine, to plan the service. And Wandine said something that changed our lives and our marriage forever. She said, "Everything that needed to be said was said." This simple yet profound statement sparked a desire in us to have that kind of marriage. A marriage where everything was always verbalized and shared. A love where important feelings were expressed and where there was never room for doubt. While we didn't always agree, we loved each other, and the depth of our love for each other and our precious daughter Andrea was never in question. I am so filled with gratitude for learning that life lesson early in our time together. That knowledge that everything that needed to be said was said has given me a great deal of peace in the midst of all this chaos. We had 38 glorious years together, 34 years, 7 months, 8 days as husband and wife. He was my best friend, my soulmate, my lover, my muse, my mentor, my filter. the best human being I have ever known. I was honored to be his wife and companion, his yittle yinny, his little ocarina, which, in case you don't know, means sweet potato. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. He challenged me, like he probably challenged many of you, to be the best human beings that we could be. And while I often failed miserably, I knew without a doubt that he loved me and he was always cheering me on, just as I loved him and cheered him on. But wasn't that what he did for all of us? Always looking for the best possible outcome and cheering us on. I know that he hopes you remember him that way. He also gave me the best gift that I've ever received, and that's to be the mother of one of my other favorite human beings. I know I'm a little prejudiced, but our Andrea, who has been the only thing that's been helping me draw breath over the last 7 weeks. And I am thankful to the whole Reed clan for loving me as their own. To my family, to my dad and Betty, my dear sister Barbara, Ben and Sarah and Laura, my nephew and nieces, and to our extended family. And thank you to Dick and Barbara for loving us and mentoring us as ministers and for claiming us as chosen family too. Thank you to all of you who knew him and loved him and who are here to share this part of his life in sacred community. Sacred community is what Terry spent his life building. I have been blessed by each of you and your love for him and for us through all of this. And now we carry his fingerprints on our hearts. And I pray that each of you will be able to find peace and comfort and joy as you remember him. We have experienced so much together in this community, haven't we? So much joy, so much sorrow, so much promise, and also some pain. But I believe that we are changed for good because we shared this life path with him and in this beloved community all together. Thank you again for being here today. I love you all very much, and Terry did too.
all this joy. Fun is for the moment. Joy has within it the heartbeat and the pulse of the eternal. We've had fun, and we've had joy, and we have sorrow, even in this experience together. Let's see. A hell of a brother, titillating, pissed off. This is the first PG memorial I've ever experienced. Now, friends, there are circumstances in which each of us are aware of the fact that death sometimes comes as a relief, as a blessing, even as a friend. Terry's did not. For we who loved him and love him now. Midnight came at noon. I confess I struggle with memorial homilies. You see, you just want everything to be so right. You want to see the right thing. At times like this, you just want to jettison all that theological jargon and tired platitudes and be able to say something, anything, that will help us understand the depth and the love and the being of someone who has meant so much to us, who lives within us, even now. Several decades ago, I was a young 20 naive priest and was asked and invited to give a sermon at Chatham, Erie Beach Reunion Grounds during a summer series of sermons. I didn't know it at the time, but I guess it was a big deal to be invited to do that. I got there as a 20-year-old and very naive, and as I got there, onto the grounds, there drove 2 World Church officers, unbeknownst to anyone there. You know what happened. The presider ran over and said, "Would you preach tonight? Would you preach tonight?" Both of them kindly said, no, we're just here to enjoy the worship service. But they did agree to participate in the service by offering an opening prayer and a closing prayer. As we gathered into the little room at the back where we have our huddles, it's amazing if you've never been there. It's a high spiritual experience. You go this way, you go this way, you do this. I didn't know who these guys were. I was not up to date on the obeisance we should give to World Church officers. To this date, I don't know who they were, but they were very important. And as we stood in the room, one of them turned to me and said, "Now, brother, young man," he says, don't be concerned that we're here. Don't be nervous. Just do." And I said, "I just want to put in a good word for Jesus." You see, I have trouble with memorial services because some would say, just put in a good word for Jesus. After all, isn't Jesus the one in whom we place our eternal trust? Yes and no. Yes and no, because, you see, there are various speculations regarding what may or may not lie beyond death's door, even in this room. Because faith is not hostage to any one religion. In fact, faith is not hostage to religion at all. Everyone needs comfort and solace in loss. Whether we be evangelicals, liberals, atheists, or agnostics, we yearn for comfort's kiss when midnight comes at noon. Tragedy unifies us. We gather regardless of the stripe that we may wear, theologically and otherwise. Put in a good word for Jesus. Frankly, friends, Jesus doesn't give ministers much help on memorial homilies because Jesus didn't conduct funerals. Jesus conducted resurrections. After years of seminary, when the disciplines of historical critical analysis of Scripture have been applied to the resurrection narratives, a process that rightly punches holes in the fabric of naivete and through which one's faith could easily drain to the bottom, I was asked Do you still believe in resurrection? Yes, I said. Why? Because resurrection is far more than the resuscitation of a physical body. Because resurrection is written in the DNA of the universe. Because resurrection is not some pie in the sky there and then. Resurrection happens now, here and now, or it doesn't happen at all. You see, I think Jesus was more concerned with life after birth than life after death. Look, friends, we live and we die, but our mistake is we think that we do them in that order. Living and dying are constants. Living and dying go on all the time. Living and dying, we die to the nightly hour. We are buried in sleep at night and awake rejoicing in the morning, a resurrected new day. We see resurrection taking place in the universe, in the DNA of life. We see it from winter to spring. Each day we die 1,000 deaths. Death and resurrection happen minute by minute, second by second. But in a sense, it is what dies inside us while we still live that is our biggest challenge. To die to violence, to die to self-aggrandizement, self-centeredness, prejudice. And we work intentionally to try to put to death those characteristics within our lives that diminish us, that make us more of who we should be. Arrogance, greed, violence, as I said. This is what makes Terry's death more damnable. The tragedy of Terry's death is immeasurably magnified because he died before all his dying was done. Because Terry continually died to such things that we've listed before. That he always died to selfishness. That he died to putting himself at the center of everyone's life. Now, some good-intended people, and I do mean this, some good-intended people may say to us, it was Terry's appointed time. It was God's will. There's a reason for it. God called him home. His home was in California. His home was his wife and his beautiful daughter and his family and his friends by blood, family by blood and family by extension. That was his home. The reason for Terry's death was the merging of a violent, senseless circumstance. No more, no less. Look, I understand the good intentions of those previous statements, but God, he's the God that I worship, does not circle dates on fate's calendar. The God that I worship had nothing to do with Terry's death. God does not call people home, because God's home is here as well as there. The Apostle Paul poses two questions. Where, O death, is thy victory? Where, O death, is thy sting? I'll tell you where death's sting is. It's here. It's in this assembly of loved ones and family, friends. It's real, it's undeniable, it's painful, and it's poignant, and it's deep, and it's disturbing, and it's personal. And sometimes, it's no feeling at all. An emptiness, void of tears and sorrow. Despair hangs its drapes of darkness, and joy's light seems to be quenched. Let's be candid, friends. No sprinkling of scripture text, no lofty promises of pearly gates, the angel's wings are sufficient to drown sorrow. Death does not privilege December. December's calendar. Hurt, sadness, grief, loss, and frustration, yes, even anger, are love's scream. In a very real sense, we know this. We mourn for ourselves. It is we who've lost. We who've lost. I thought for a moment this afternoon as I listened to the many tributes given to Terry, that if everyone here was Terry, and as you struggled up here, sharing your very heartfelt feelings, blocked by emotion, I think you would have been smothered because Terry would have run up and wrapped his arms around you. Listen, and listen very carefully. Grief will have its say. It must. They who do not grieve do not love. Grief is love's invoice. Death's sting will dissipate as time slowly soothes our raw wounds, but grief, now hear this, grief never betrays love. Grief never sleeps so deeply that it cannot be awakened, no more so than can the love that is its source. Like Terry, my father was killed when I was 6, my brother was 8. That was decades ago. Decades ago. And there are still moments when grief will have its say. Where, O death, is thy victory? I'll tell you where it is. It's here. It's in this assembly. In the love that's being poured out and shall continue to be poured out for this fine man. Because death has no final victory. Death does not have the last word. Death's victory is swallowed up by what Paul calls, and listen to this, a faithful knowing. Contradiction in terms. By a faithful knowing. Be that as it may, belief in grace beyond the grave cannot and must not theologically sugarcoat grace's painful presence, for doing so denies the worth of one whose life has sewn his threads into the fabric of who we are. Now let's be clear, and I am going to finish. Let's be clear. Terry would not have us make more of in death than he was in life. In fact, we're powerless to do so because very few of us knew the more of him. You knew the more of him, and you knew the more of him. Andre. His closest friends knew some of him, but they knew the more of him. Penelope and I have been married for almost 54 years. I know her better than anyone, and she knows me better than anyone. There are times when I take her for granted instead of gratitude. And there are moments, serendipitous moments, when suddenly I look at her and I discover the more of her, and I fall in love all over again. So what do we know? We know we've been blessed by Terry's quiet, unassuming, compassionate spirit. We know he loved deeply and passionately his wife Linda, his daughter Andrea. We know he loved his family, his extended family. We know he had a deep current of faith that claimed him and flowed through him. We know he is who he is, a unique, unrepeated miracle of creation who dwells with that which authors life. So what do you do when midnight comes anew? When the morn, you're passing of one who is dying before all his dying is done. I'll tell you what you do. You lean forward, assured that grace abides and will not let you go. You lean forward, embracing love's other word, hope. Stained by tears, buoyed by laughter's memory, hope leans forward, promising that joy, love, and peace will dance among the ashes, even as it has today. Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, agnostic, atheist, whatever label you choose, in our own way, we are Easter people, a people of lively resurrection and renewal, a people who not only are claimed by hope, but claim it. We say goodbye to a good man, not a perfect man, not someone we need to glorify in death. Terry wouldn't like that. He wouldn't agree with it. He wouldn't stay to listen to it. Heaven, hell, everlasting life. Terry would not have us speculate on what Reinhold Niebuhr called the temperature and furniture of heaven. Terry would want us to focus on the now. He would want us to look to the desired future, a time, place, and condition where love is the heartbeat of relationships and community. Terry would simply want us to put in a good word for Jesus. I think Terry would say this to us. Friends, when midnight comes at noon, we need not shape hope's dreams, paint its pearly gates, nor weave its feathered wings. We need only trust its flight.
After the conclusion of our service and the family has been dismissed and leaves the room, I would invite all of you to join with them in a reception in the social hall, which is 1/2 floor up to your left. I'll just tempt you to go up there by saying 3 words: Ben and Jerry's. We close then with these words from the scripture, from the final book of the New Testament, the book of Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the oceans were no more. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, as if coming down out of heaven from God. And I heard a loud voice from the very throne of God saying, "Look, the home of God is here among mortals. God will dwell with them as their God, and they will be God's people. The God of the universe will always be with them. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for these things shall have passed away." We sing these words penned by Shirley Arena Murray, who made me think often of Terry. Give thanks for those who made their life a light, caught from Christ's flame, bursting through the night, who touched the truth, who burned for what is right. Alleluia.
In this very room, our friends and family, common folk with uncommon dreams pinned by iffy beliefs and dim miracles that bind us together in memory of a life lived and a love shared. Thoughts, feelings, hopes, healings, questions, and concerns in this very room. Some hidden, some not. Some waiting beyond the margins where songs are sung, prayers are prayed, love is poured, and friendship shared. In this room, this very room, are memories, anecdotes, stories shared and told of one whose life has touched our own, whose hands have woven gifts of grace, whose presence filled love's empty space with friendship's voice and warm embrace. Here, in this room, holy things have happened, caught between sweet second hands of memory. Sorrow will be soothed by balms of grace, and hope will find its way. Peace will mend our wounded hearts, and love will have its say. Beyond death's inky shadow, beyond our tears of grief, the spirit of this life we share still lives and soars anew. Amen.